Alright, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to start this lesson off by giving all the praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Honors to all the brothers who are fervently preaching the word in sincerity and in faith, and Shalom to the sincere Aqua and the scattered Israelites who are amongst these heathen nations and look like these heathens. Now, this lesson is going to be based on this article in regards to Cuba's power grid collapsing and plunging the eastern provinces into a major blackout. And for the most part, those people out there in Cuba are Israelites from the northern kingdom. And the Lord is basically bringing judgment upon his people, the wicked of his people. That's why Cuba's going through what they're going through, because a lot of them are wicked. A lot of them are wicked Israelites whom the Lord is angry with. And this is just further judgment from the Lord being brought upon them. So through the Spirit, I'm going to read this article, get some precepts, and Lord's will, you're edified. Cuba's national energy grid suffered a major failure early Thursday that severed power to the island's eastern provinces, authorities said, as residents in the capital Havana faced ongoing blackouts. Cuba's aging power grid has eroded in recent years as it faces a prolonged economic crisis recently made worse by a U.S. energy blockade of the island, where daily life can be an ordeal for many of the country's 10 million people. The state-run electric union said the collapse had stripped power from all eastern provinces, from Guantanamo to Ciego de Avila, and that crews were working to restore power, but it did not give an estimate for how long it would take. The previous day, Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel had described the energy situation as tense after supplies of oil delivered by a Russian vessel in late March ran out. Cuba produces barely 40% of the fuel it needs to power its economy. Russia announced plans to send a second fuel ship to Cuba in early April. According to Russian news reports, the oil tanker left the Russian Baltic port in January, but has been stuck in the same place in the Atlantic Ocean for the last several weeks. Power outages in Havana, where authorities have been rationing power, stretched to 24 consecutive hours on Thursday. On Wednesday evening, Associated Press journalists saw residents in numerous neighborhoods banging pots and pans and setting fire to trash cans to protest the blackouts. Hours later, Energy and Mines Minister Vicente de la Olive appeared on Cuban television to describe the energy situation as critical. Cuba's power grid is crumbling, but the government also has blamed the outages on U.S. sanctions after President Donald Trump in January warned of tariffs on any country that sells or provides oil to Cuba. The Trump administration has demanded that Cuba release political prisoners and move toward political and economic liberation in return for a lifting of sanctions. The blackouts have led to reduced work hours and food spoilage as refrigerators stop working. In some cases, hospitals have canceled surgeries. Yeah, so they're really going through it out there. And that's the judgment of the Lord being brought upon them, because they continue to anger him with their wickedness. Psalms 9 and 16. The Lord Yahweh is known by the judgment which he executeth. The wicked is snared in the work of his own hand, Higgaion Selah. And that's right. Because, see, the Lord is not Cesare Borgia. He's not an Edomite. His name is not Jesus. And those people out there in Cuba, they worship Jesus. You know, they don't call on the names of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. So basically, they're worshiping a false God. And the Heavenly Father does not like that. That angers him, because he says that that people shall have no other gods but him. And that's one of the many reasons why the Lord constantly is pouring out his wrath upon the earth. Because these people, whether they're two-thirds Israelites or they're heathens, they're all worshiping false gods. But then when the Lord sends that judgment, their false gods don't protect them because their false gods don't exist. And the men of the Lord keep trying to explain that to these people, but nobody wants to listen. They're too stiff-necked, stubborn, rebellious, hard-headed, and ultimately they're just wicked, and they deserve death. Isaiah 48:22. There is no peace, saith the Lord Yahweh, unto the wicked. And that's clear. Every time you turn around, the Lord is bringing judgment, whether it's power outages, food shortages, oil shortages, violence, diseases, earthquakes, fires, storms, tempests, whatever it is, the Lord is constantly bringing judgment upon these wicked people, making life more difficult and more stressful for them because he's angry with them. Hebrews 10:30. For we know him that hath said, Vengeance belongeth unto me, I will recompense, saith the Lord. And again, the Lord shall judge his people. And like I said, those people out there in Cuba, for the most part, those are Israelites. And they're wicked, and they're getting punished by the Lord. And because they're not going to get their act together, the Lord is just going to keep pouring out his wrath upon them, making life more strenuous, more difficult for them. Because, our people, the Israelites, especially these two-thirds, they are some hard-headed people, man. They don't want to get right, even though, look at what's happening to them for doing wickedness. They're suffering so much, and yet they don't want to turn from their wicked ways. That's why the Lord has to just flat out kill them. He has to wipe them out. Because they're never going to change. Even though the way that they're doing things is not helping them, it's actually hurting them. And that's the problem with two-thirds, they're stuck. They're stuck being wicked. And they're going to die that way. First Peter 3:12, for the eyes of the Lord are over the righteous, and his ears are open unto their prayers. But the face of the Lord is against them that do evil. And this is what happens to those that do evil or are evil in the eyes of the Lord. The Lord just constantly brings judgment upon you. Like those people out there in Cuba, they cannot catch a break. And they don't deserve to, because they won't give the Heavenly Father a break with their constant wickedness. At the end of the day, you're always going to lose when you try to go against the Lord. You are always going to lose. And that's what those people out in Cuba are experiencing. They're experiencing losses because they're trying to do their own thing instead of following the ways of the Lord. And so the Lord is just punishing them, and he's going to continue to do it. And a lot of people out there are going to die. But they'll be okay when they come back in the kingdom. Then they'll be in their right state of mind. They won't go off anymore, and therefore the Lord won't have to punish them anymore. But what's happening out there in Cuba is a prime example of what the Lord can do to you when he's angry. Shut off the power. Your food is spoiling. And there's no estimated time for when the power is going to come back on. So you're just sitting in darkness, starving. You don't have any water or any clean water. and then the violence increases. People start getting kidnapped and raped and murdered left and right. It gets real bad. Hospitals shutting down, people dying because they can't get their surgery that they desperately need. Like, hey, Lord is the last one you want to piss off. And people are just constantly provoking the Lord unto wrath because they don't understand that that's the worst thing that you can do. But these people, they're going to learn. They're going to have to learn the hard way. They're going to have to learn after death by pain, but they're going to learn. And that's why those of us of the hopeful elect can't really feel bad for these people. Because even though those people out there in Cuba, like I said, for the most part, they are Israelites. They are our people. They're wicked. They're angering the Lord. So they're just being punished for the wickedness that they're doing. And there are some people out there whom the Lord, will, protect and open up their eyes. But for the most part, those people are going to have to die first and then be brought back in the kingdom before they are in their right state of mind and see things the way that they're supposed to see things and move in a righteous manner. And what's happening out there in Cuba is just yet another example of the Lord visiting this world and bringing wrath and judgment upon wicked people. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up here. In closing, I want to give all the praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashim, Yahushai, Ba'ashim, Rakakwadash, the water Yahweh, Ba'ashim, Yahushai, for putting the spirit on me to do this lesson. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Honors to our brothers who are fervently preaching the word in sincerity and in faith. Shalom to the sincere Aqua, and shalom to the scattered Israelites who are amongst these heathen nations and look like these heathen. Stay strong, stay safe, stay fervent, stay circumspect, stay prayed up, and Adawan Ratazah, which means Lord's will. Until next time, shalom.